show me the way. Show me the way, show me the way. I've been out here feeling lost, trying to find my way. Show me the way, show me the way. Lord, show me. Got my head high, but I'm feeling low, low, low. Lord, I need your direction, let me know, no, no. Show me the way. Yes, sir, show me the way. Yes, sir, show me the way. Show me, Lord, show me. Show me. Lord, show
life is better when we do it together.
Peace.
Good morning, everybody. I'm hoping you guys can hear and see us well. We're bringing you greetings from 3C Community Church, ReNew You. I know you guys have been waiting to see us. And so we're going to get ready to roll into some topics this morning. This is going to be the second in a series that we've been covering lately, but I'm going to let Nicole, who's been absent for the last couple of times, I am excited that she's back, because if you don't know, Nicole keeps us on point. So with that said, would you take us in, please?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I try my best to keep us on target. In regards to my absence, family sometimes says, hey, we need your attention over here. So we still do our best to keep ReNew You moving forward. And as Paul shared, this is part 2 in a 3-part series where we are focusing on different aspects of relationships. But before we get into that, Paul, let's talk a little bit about our foundational scripture for ReNew You, which is Romans 12:2. And before he even puts that scripture up, let's talk about our goal. Our goal as a part of the ReNew You ministry is to help you develop a God-focused mindset. So what we do is try to provide you with the knowledge to be able to mature through life's moments. We recognize that challenges will come your way. The word doesn't say we won't have any. As a matter of fact, it says we will have trials and tribulations, but it also equips us with the skills that we need to be able to handle those challenges. So we like to put it like this. The storm is coming. Do you have your raincoat, rain boots, and hat? Will you be ready? Paul, are you maneuvering slides for us, or is Pastor in the background with those slides?
I think he's in the background.
All right. So let's roll into our foundational scripture, which is Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So think about it like this. When you renew your mind, what we want you to do is to focus your attention on God. And this allows you to be changed from the inside out. And so this is because your mind is where you generate your thoughts. And we know that our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits, your habits become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. And it becomes your destiny because your character directs your life. Your character is how you carry yourself, but it's also how people respond to you. And your character can either keep you on that right path toward those plans God has for you, or it can keep you to continue to stumble and not be able to successfully maneuver along that path.
And so now you know why I missed her, okay? Because there's nothing else that needs to be said. And that is the purpose of the ministry, is to be able to equip you, okay, with the tools that you're going to need to be able to make it through life's moments. So with that said, let's go to that next one where we're looking at upcoming ReNew You topics. Yeah. What we covered in April, not to go backwards, okay, but what we covered in April was how to identify toxic relationships. And if you remember, we walked through, we're going to do a little review of it. But what we did was we walked through some specific things that you can look for that tell you, hey, I might be in a toxic relationship. And so that takes us to this month. And this month, we're going to cover today, keeping yourself safe in and from toxic relationships. And then, of course, looking forward in June, we're going to cap it off with what a healthy relationship should look like.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
So again, our topic today, we're focusing on keeping yourself safe in toxic relationships. Is that, yeah, that's it. So Paul, let's talk a little bit about the word toxic as a part of this process.
Nicole, she made me laugh because she likes the one from Urban Dictionary.
Oh, yes.
What we'll start with is the fact that toxic refers to something that is poisonous. That's what the Oxford Dictionary says about it. WebMD says it like this: a toxic person is anyone whose behavior adds negativity and upset to your life. And then finally, for those of you who don't know, Urban Dictionary keeps it real. It says it like this: it says, toxic is when they can't let you go, but won't treat you right either. And I find that to be so absolutely true. So that's the word toxic for us.
Yeah. And I like that Urban Dictionary because I could see my people sitting around the table talking about somebody, in the family who's in one of
Right.
these situations. And that's exactly the response that they would have about it. They can't let you go, but they won't treat you right either. Trying to figure out why is it that we're still here. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about some tips to keep you safe if you are in situations like that. But we do have a couple of scriptures that we want to look at before we move forward.
All right. Yep. So here's four good ones. Now, let me just preface it by saying this. There are a whole bunch of scriptures we could have went to. Some of them we're going to hit upon as we go along. But just as an example, okay, Titus 3:10. Titus 3:10 says, as for a person who stirs up division after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with them. This actually reminds me of a movie I saw. I can't think of the name of the movie, but they offered up the joke in the movie. What do you tell a guy with two black eyes? Nothing. He's been told twice already.
I like that. And the other reason why I like this particular scripture, because basically it says you give anybody a chance, right? But you still call them out when something is offensive about it or doesn't sit right with you. And now they receive that warning, but then if the next time you encounter them, they still proceed to carry themselves in that same manner, then you need to start making some decisions about whether or not you continue to interact with this person or be a part of this environment.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is after two times, what it's suggesting, at least to me, is three times is a habit. You're not going to
Ooh,
stop. Okay.
absolutely.
And so all I can do, as we're going to talk about, is separate myself from you. So the second one, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man. Let me make sure we understand. Man, woman, man, woman. It applies to men and women. And so what this scripture in Proverbs 22:24 is attempting to tell us is it's trying to give us wisdom before the situation happens. If you notice that there is a person who is angry, given over to angry, in other words, situations that normally a normal person can handle emotionally upsets this person, then you've been warned. You may not want to, keep company with these type of people.
This is also that person in the office that's always stirring up trouble. Do not align yourself with that person.
Yep.
Because that's not the focus that we want to have when we're in a work environment.
Yep. What's interesting is 1 Corinthians 15:33. That third one, okay, is telling you. So Proverbs 22:24 said, hey, don't do it. Okay. Don't go with these people. Don't affiliate with these people. But 1 Corinthians 15:33 is actually telling us what will happen if we do. Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. In other words, let me translate. It's going to pull you under with them. Okay.
Absolutely.
When two competing entities come together, one or two things are going to happen. They're going to pull you in or you're going to pull them in. And more than likely in a situation like this, because they're given over to the way that they live, they're going to pull you in.
I
So
like that.
don't do it.
I like that. So let's look at our last one, Proverbs 13:20. And like Paul shared, there's a lot of them. We just picked these four to focus on today. But Proverbs 13:20 reads, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And for me, what this says is you need to choose your friends wisely. Because the people that you associate yourself with, they're going to influence your decisions and your behaviors, where you go and who you hang around. Same thing goes for not just for friends, but your work environment. Choose your work environment wisely. We spend a lot of hours in the work environment. Some of us more time at work than we do with family, just because you got to build in sleep time. So do your research on organizations and even members of social groups that you are thinking about aligning yourself with. So the key to that one is make sure you choose wisely, whatever the situation you're in.
Yep, choose wisely, because here's what's going to happen. Later on, we're going to talk about support, making sure you have good support around you. You can't choose family, okay? And we'll get into that, okay? You can't choose family, but you can choose friends. You can choose the people that you're going to affiliate yourself with. And it's important that you know, in times of difficulty, this is going to be your safety net. So choose wisely, okay? So
in regards to choosing family, Paul, we can't choose family, but we can choose how much we interact with them, how much we engage with them, and we can set some limits and boundaries there. So like he said, we'll try to cover both of those areas for you today.
Absolutely. So let's go to that next slide. We're going to do a little bit of a review from our last session. One of the things, and I shouldn't say one of the things, but here are just some of the behaviors that you're going to notice in toxic people. We went through all of this last month, so we're just going to go through this very briefly here. In other words, what you'll notice is they always have a need for attention. Got to be the center of everything. Okay, you'll notice it because it'll prick at you a little bit. This person seems to need all the attention. Superiority. Always think they're in charge. Always think they're better than you are. In other words, these are the type of people who, in order for them to feel good about themselves, they must put you down. Okay. They've got this exaggerated sense of importance. They think they are bigger, better, stronger, more important than everybody else. And with that comes a sense of entitlement. You know, everything, when everything is not given to them like they think it should be, they become upset. They want to disconnect. It literally bothers them. There's a lot of black and white thinking. In other words, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. And this is a method that they use for control. And as you can imagine, this is part of the perfectionistic piece that goes with that, you know. Let's go to that next slide. So in that next slide, what we're going to see is they are moody, especially when things don't go their way. They're moody. We talked about control already, but it's worth saying again. They have to control everything. They want to control the money. They want to control your access to friends and family. They want to control your social media access. They want total control. You'll notice that they're arrogant and they lack empathy. In other words, they don't care about you, and you'll pick up on that if you pay attention real close. So those are the behaviors. Okay, let's go to that next slide, and then okay.
Well, Paul, I just want to say before you go into these, in regards to those behaviors, you did go through them quickly. So I got to speak for Pastor Joel since he's not with us. In order to get more detail on those, we need you to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and then check out April's ReNew You so you can get the full presentation as it relates to those toxic behaviors and how they play out in situations.
Did I tell you I missed her? I missed her. So one of the things we need to understand, last month, what we did was we broke it down. We broke it down and said, okay, here's what you can look for in terms of toxicity in people in romantic relationships. Here's what you can look for in professional relationships. Here's what you can look for in family. Here's what you can look for in social and peer groups. This month, we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to put them all together, because what we find is that you're going to use the same skill that applies to all of these things. The same skill you'll use inside of a romantic relationship will be the same skill that you employ inside of a professional, a family, a social relationship as well. So it applies to all of these things. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Without further ado, let's go. Go ahead. You got something.
No, I just want to say that, because like when I looked at this slide, like 16 things we can do to stay safe, right? So my first thought was, why would we even stay? You know how you get all your girlfriends together and you talked about the situation and they're like, girl, just pack your bag and leave. And Paul, we do recognize that sometimes it's the guy that needs to lead the situation. As we talk about emotional abuse, physical abuse, all different types. Same thing with job situations. But I want everyone to just remember that reality is sometimes it is a process to leave a situation, right? For example, if it's a toxic work environment, but you need your finances to take care of your family, you're going to need to secure another job before you can walk out the door. Or if it is a toxic living situation, we need to secure some additional housing, or, make sure we have a safe place to go before we walk out the door. And y'all know I love my family, but sometimes it could be just a short-term family trip that's gone toxic. And I got 37 more hours before I can get back to my home in Richmond, Virginia. So some of these strategies are going to help me while I have to continue to engage in that process before I can get to a safe place and remove myself from that situation.
Well said. You are absolutely right. It is so true. So let's go to that first thing, 16 things. It reminds me of the old song, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Okay. Get on the bus, Gus. Don't need
Paul
to
telling his age,
much.
y'all. Paul telling his age.
It's just true, So the first thing we want to talk about that you need to know is you need to prepare to fight. Am I talking about physically fight? Let's hope not. Okay. But you do need to prepare yourself mentally, not just mentally, but emotionally and spiritually, because you're going to, first of all, it's going to take courage. What do I mean by courage? I'm not talking about the act of being fearless. All throughout the Bible, it talks about that we are to be of good courage, be of good courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to take action in the midst of fear. So don't expect that your fear is going to fall away. What I'm saying essentially is this is going to be new for you. Okay. And so you're going to feel something when you begin to do this, because you're going to be saying, all right, can I do this? I don't feel comfortable as I used to feel when I would let these people run over me. I'm getting ready to take a stand. So prepare yourself mentally to fight. And that's going to require courage.
And also, too, just because you reference fear, like I've heard that acronym FEAR of face everything and rise, right? So again, that's part of preparing for the battle. I got to face this negative situation, but I'm going to rise to the occasion to make sure that I appropriately address it.
That's very, very, very true. Some things you're going to need to think about is this. What do you stand for? You're getting ready to take a stand. You're getting ready to literally work to break up what the Bible calls fallow ground. Okay. In other words, you're going to take this ground and you're going to begin to cultivate it. But before you do any of this, you have to figure out, okay, what is it that I stand for? What are my values in my life? And that may require you to do an inventory, and they're out there on Google, of what your values actually are. Nicole mentioned family is important to her. And so the question becomes, what's important to you? Is your success in your career important? Is the safety of your children important? Is owning your own home and that home being safe important? So you'll have to begin to ponder these things, okay? Because Everything that we're talking about has to do with boundaries,
Mhm.
okay? And just like your property, okay? If I tell somebody, hey, don't come on my property, I need to be prepared to tell them where my property line is, okay? I can't say, don't come on my property and then don't show them where the
Mhm.
property line is. Because
But not
now,
only that, Paul, don't come on my property. And you're whatever you set yourself to be the consequence if they come on your property, you got to be able to stick to that as well. Because
mhm,
otherwise they're gonna see that they can walk over you, which is what happens in toxic relationships. If you say one thing, but then you don't back it up with your truth, that's how you continue to find yourself in
mm,
that cycle.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. And so call on Galatians
Mm.
5:22. Galatians 5:22 says, but the fruit of the spirit, you've heard it before, is love,
Mhm.
joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. But it's really the last one that I want to get to, self-control.
Mhm.
Okay. And so you're going to need it. So begin, if you don't do that on a regular basis, begin the practice of self-control.
Mhm. Yep. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about what it means when we say call them by their name.
Call them by their name. There's, for some reason, and understand this, it causes a right sizing effect. Okay. When you call them by their name, it brings them from up here down to your level. Okay. And what that does is that empowers you now to be able to address them directly. So there's, for whatever reason, we haven't figured it out yet, but there is something that is disempowering
Mhm.
to a toxic person when you look them in the eye and you say, "Hey, Benjamin." No offense, Benjamin. I'm just using your name. Okay, but Benjamin, and I call his name and then I state my case. Okay, it gives Benjamin the mindset that, okay, he's trying to be on my level, and it shrinks him down.
Mhm.
It reminds me of the word humility.
Mhm.
And so a definition that I've learned to adopt with humility is the thought that I am no better or worse than anybody else.
Mhm.
And so me calling them by their name shows that I'm no worse
Mhm.
or no better than
Mhm.
you.
I
We're
like
both right here.
I like that. I like that. And then now that you've got their attention, you call them by their name, you engage them. I'm talking to you. We eye to eye. We have to make sure that we stick to the subject of what that conversation is focused on. So talk to us about why that's important.
I know that was a favorite one for you. Stick to the subject. I'm poking at you. Um, Stick to the subject. Toxic people tend to be very shallow.
Mhm.
They don't have much information on
Mhm.
the thing that they're accusing you of. Okay. And so when they go to accuse you of things, they're going to jump around from subject to subject. You did
Mhm.
this last week. You did this the month before. And so let's talk about this subject. By helping them or by causing them to stick to the subject again, it takes the power away from them because again, they're shallow by
Mhm.
nature. Okay, so
Right.
they don't have a lot of information,
Mhm.
and so it's going to be important for you
Mhm.
to be able to bring the focus back to the topic.
Absolutely right. And the other thing I thought about was like you finally got comfortable enough to take a stand and address them. So them jumping around to other subjects and bringing up other things you've done in the past again also is attack on your self-esteem and your self-worth because they're going to point out negative things that you did or things that they set up to make look like was, a downfall of your
Mm,
own. But again, all of them are about distracting you from the focus of your conversation. So for me, I always say have your talking points, right? That way, when they try to divert you, you can go back to your main talking points, a good 3 to 5. This is why we're here. This is what we need to discuss. This is the expected change. Or you might be at the point of, we're beyond change. This is what's going to happen next as it relates to our relationship and our situation. So you got
excellent.
to have some confidence, and having talking points helps you to be confident when you've had that opportunity to have those talking points and rehearse them. Because that was another thing that Paul and I talked about. It's okay to rehearse this conversation ahead of time. Talk
Mhm.
to yourself in the mirror or if you have a friend you can bounce it off of, or write your words out to get comfortable with saying them, because that's going to be very important, not only just for the engagement and them understanding you, but for them to see your confidence and to recognize that what I'm saying is true and I'm going to stand on this moving forward.
Absolutely. Rehearse it. Say no. Say it again. Rehearse it. That way, when it comes time to say it, you've got some practice in it. So,
Amen.
very,
I like that.
very good. Very, very good.
Yeah. And then when you get in that conversation, of course, they're going to get emotional, because that's one of the traits of toxic people. We talked about them being moody and changing. So we want to remind you to not take responsibility for their emotions. You have to let them own their behaviors and what it is that they do, because basically this emotional up and down roller coaster, that's a part of the manipulation process, right? For some, it could be crying because they know you're going to be impacted by that, or it could be yelling because you're intimidated by that. But again, be mindful of this. If when this starts and you can see that this has happened before, that ought to help you to be able to say, this is why I'm not going to allow it to continue in this situation. Again, I'm not saying be rude, but overlook the emotion, stick to what it is you're trying to do so that you can make sure you get across the word that you're trying to get across in this situation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's entrapment. Okay. In other words, literally everything that they do is an attempt to manipulate somehow. Okay. And so it's important that you know from a foundational standpoint that it's your responsibility to own your emotions.
That's right.
That belongs to no one else but you. But it's also their responsibility to own theirs. And so when you look at an abuse cycle, what happens typically is this honeymoon phase starts, and then it starts to heat up as it goes around. And once it heats up, then there's this explosion phase where something happens, okay? Could be physical, could be yelling and name calling and putting down. And then there's this quiet period where maybe they bring you flowers or do nice things for you and apologize and say, listen, I'm going to change. I know I was wrong. And then there's this, we go back to the honeymoon phase where everything's good again, but the cycle starts again. So it's going to be important that you learn how to own your own emotions and let them own theirs. Okay. That's, oh boy, I don't want to go too far on this. That's one of the reasons why toxic people may become drawn to us, is because they sense us as being what we call empaths, empathic people. And so empathic people tend to care about people. They tend to see the best in people, even in people who are toxic. And toxic people take complete advantage of that.
All right, we're going to get to our next 4 because we got 16 we're trying to cover. Woo. But when we do the next 4, let's try to think of examples as they relate to a work environment. Just because we've talked so much about relationships, but we also share this same knowledge skill set can apply in other situations. So and I'm saying that for myself, not just for you, Paul. Let's think about in a work environment how we could use these. So other tips for staying safe, we say don't engage them, right? Now, we know that this is not always realistic. However, there may be opportunities if you're thinking about a work environment that you don't necessarily have to engage the person, right? So me, like we were raised, you speak, good morning, that's it. I've done my due diligence. The only other time I'm going to engage you is if you come to me with a work project that I'm required to be a part of. Otherwise, I'm not here for the side conversation, because that's normally where, we get into trouble in the work environment, because they are either demeaning others or just trying to derail you from doing what it is you're supposed to do because their performance is not good. So for me, I say stick to like what I'm here to do. I'm here to be productive at my job, not to be friends with so-and-so.
I couldn't have said it better. You're minding your own business. One of your colleagues comes over to you, Nicole thinks she's all of that. They're baiting you. Don't engage them. Okay. I hate this place. Okay. I'm thinking about going to the labor board on them because this is the 3rd time this week don't engage them. Okay. We talked about manipulation. You're being manipulated into this discussion. Okay. And then it's going to end in your own entrapment. So
Right.
absolutely.
Mhm. And because what happens is when you don't engage them, they don't have any power. Their power comes from you responding. So that's why in that situation, you don't want to engage them at all.
I
Okay.
almost wanted to stand up and shout. That is absolutely true. In other words, when you don't think about it this way, they need you.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel that way, but they need you. An abuser needs someone to abuse.
Mhm.
That's
Absolutely.
you. Okay. But you don't have to engage him. So,
Absolutely.
very good point. Very
Mhm.
good.
Another point up here is don't be deceived by them, right? So
Mhm.
think about it like this. Don't believe the words that come out of their mouth, right? That's like because a lot of times it is gossip. It's he say, she
Yes.
say things. So
Yes.
you just want to make sure that whatever information they share, you don't want to take that information and run and do some base with it. Do some research, find out if it's true, if it does apply to you in a situation, but don't just take them at face value, especially if they've shown themselves not to be trustworthy individuals.
Exactly. And so what happens is what you're going to find is when you investigate, you're going to find two things at play. One is they're going to lie to you.
Mm.
Okay. You need to, and that's why you need to investigate it. But watch this, a toxic person will not lie to you if the truth will do more damage.
Ooh.
So you got to pay attention. Okay. Don't be deceived by them. Sometimes they'll use the truth. That's one of the biggest tricks of the devil. Okay. Using the truth to deceive you. So you have to really pay attention to that one.
Mm, I like that. Another one, and this one kind of lines up with that one, is talking about call them on their lies, Paul. So tell us about how those two are different.
And so here's the thing, even at work, with family members, in personal relationships, okay, am I saying call that you're a liar? No. What I am saying is that there are 100 different ways to say, Nicole, that's not true. And then state the facts.
Mm,
Okay. Nicole, that's not true. I got here at 8:05 this morning. I got here at 8:10 yesterday morning. And in both cases, I wasn't due to start work until 8:30. That's not true.
I like that.
Okay.
And in my head, I'm gonna be saying it's none of your business anyway. But since you're trying to put me on blast and other people are around here and can hear us, I need to make sure I keep my job safe and secure. That's the only reason you're getting a response from me in this situation.
And so, interesting enough, the Bible talks about itching ears. Yeah.
Mm,
They're looking for topics where they can make it public on what's going on. And so you have to be aware. Don't be baited by that stuff.
I like that too, because the other thought I just had, especially when you said baited, is the temptation is to, let's say if they are true, right? Suppose you're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock and you get there at 8:05, and then they want to say, you know what, you got here at 8:05. In the natural, I want to say you get here at 8:15 every other day of the week, right?
Right.
But again, you gave them power when you did that, because then they can go to the next topic and jump to the next thing and escalate. So when they, you went low with them versus staying high in the process, right? So just be mindful of that again, because that is a way that we get baited into those conversations.
Oh man, there are so many ways that this can work. And yeah, so know that they are constantly looking for a method of entrapment.
Mhm.
And what better way to entrap you than to pull at the strings of the things that you know are important to you.
Mhm.
And before you know it, you done lost it and you done engaged them. So be careful there.
Yeah. And the last one on that slide is surround yourself with healthy supports, right? And we talked a little bit about this one, and I hope you did your research, Paul, because we talked about the fact in Matthew 4:11, angels ministered at the feet of Jesus. So technically, we're saying that's a healthy support, but talk a little bit more about that.
So when we talk about healthy supports, in other words, way back at the beginning, we were talking about the fact that it's important that we choose the right people that we affiliate with, because in times of need, these are going to be the people that we go to. Let me give you a real world scenario. If there's a death in my family, do I want to be in company with a toxic person? If I have a situation if I have a situation at work where I really need some advice on how to engage my boss, do I really want to go to a toxic person to get that type of advice. So what we're doing is in all situations at work. I had a good friend many years ago that gave me this tip. He said, always look for friendly people. And what he meant by friendly people is upright, righteous people in a hostile environment. Because at the time I was going into a hostile environment, and he was giving me some tips on how to handle that. And so whenever you go in to a new place, find the righteous people. Okay. And you'll know them, because the toxic people will set themselves apart through gossip and all of this stuff. Okay. So find good people at work. They're there. You're not the only one. Okay. Find good people within the family that you can talk to about things, even in your relationships with your girlfriends, with your guy friends. Okay, there has to be somebody, or there should be somebody that we can talk to, because what happens is one of our basic needs on earth is to have relationships with people. Okay, God said it's not good that man be alone. Okay, and he's right. Okay, and so we were built for relationship. The problem is that if I choose the wrong people, now I'm giving my power over to those people, all because I made a bad decision. So make good decisions in terms of people who are going to be your support, and then slowly begin to withdraw from those people who you have noticed are toxic. You can still speak, you can still engage them in surface conversation, but don't, what the Bible says, don't cast your pearls to swine, you know. So that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Also, too, just thinking about those supports, you do need them in different circles, and they do serve different purposes. And so, for example, even if it's a work situation, it doesn't necessarily have to be another person that works with you, right? So I talk a lot about my book club that I'm a part of, and how we are so much more than a book club. We're a great group of friends. We've been through, graduations, births, divorces together, and we really are a solid foundation of, of truly being able to support each other and offer sound advice, in situations. So we all need to have this in our lives, somebody that we can go to, like Paul said, be they a sounding board, because you're going to trust that they're going to give good information. But we also have to remember that we have to make ourselves that same type of we need to present ourselves to others in that way. In other words, don't be the one always needing it and gathering and taking from others, right? Sometimes you might need to be the one to fill that other person back up, right? So I was thinking back just that, angels ministering at his feet. They were there to build him up, to support him, to surround him, to protect him. We need to have that from others, but we also need to be that person to others as well.
Right. Because in this scenario, Jesus had literally just did spiritual battle with Satan. Yeah. Okay. And so from a human standpoint, he needed to be built back up so that he could continue to do the work of the Father. So real huge. Here's something else in terms of having supports. We need new information. Okay. We can't possibly think we know it all. We don't. Okay. No matter what I say, Nicole's got another perspective on it. Okay. And so that's why we need people, because people can give us new information that we never thought about, that we never knew about. Our supports can also give us a different perspective. Paul, I know you know that this works like that, but look at it this way. And I'm going, wow, I never looked at it that way. Okay. I think Proverbs, I wish I'd have found this earlier. Proverbs says, a man thinketh one way until another opinion is offered. Ooh, okay. And so, yeah, that's what we need from our supports. Our supports, which is why we call them that, okay, offers us that perspective that for whatever reason we don't have in our situations, because sometimes we become biased, and that's okay, as long as I got my support.
And I don't want to get too far off track, but that's important, because sometimes when people think differently from us and make a statement, we might want to go to a mindset of I'm right, you're wrong. right? But no, like Paul said, it's a different perspective. I see it this way based on my value and belief system, and you see it that way, and also your environment. So again, it's about seeing things or understanding them from other person's viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
Also tying back in and just being empathetic in situations. Just because it's not the way that you would have behaved in that situation, it doesn't mean that they weren't justified in doing that. The other benefit is when we are open to having empathy in situations, we are less likely to be judgmental in situations. Because when we get judgmental, it's because it's different from what we would have done. That doesn't make it right or wrong, but we're judgmental because we're narrow, right? But when we're open to others' perspectives and understanding why they may have done things that way, then we're more open to being in a place to be able to support them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Going back to your book club, my saying here is if you build it, you'll have it. Okay.
Amen.
But if you don't, you won't. And so there was a time where Nicole joined this book club. I don't know when that was. Okay. How many years ago it might have been, but she joined this book club. And when she joined, she didn't know anybody, or maybe she knew one person or whatever. But over time, a beautiful relationship began to evolve between her and all the members of that book club. And so years later, she has a support system. Okay. You have to build it. You have to sow into it. Okay. But if you do these things, okay, when it rains, you'll have an umbrella.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it. All right, let's go to our next slide. We've got another slide with tips for staying safe. And the first one, we're talking about your ego. Their ego. Don't fuel their ego.
I want you to picture having a conversation with Satan, saying something like, "Oh, Satan, you're so smart. I can't believe how good you deceive people. This is the third person you done deceived today. You're so good at what you do. Don't do it." Okay. The whole purpose of you standing your ground and digging in is an attempt to get this person to see that you cannot treat me this way. Okay. And so you don't want to fuel their ego. Okay. You don't. The problem with this is that empathic, and I don't want to put this in the wrong way, but the toxic person will find people that they can prey upon. And so it is that those same people, okay, that have a tendency to compliment people because they're of the mindset that if I compliment this person, they won't hurt me. Okay. People pleasing, we call it. Okay. And so don't try to resist that. Okay. Toxic people are going to hurt you. That is what they do. Okay. And so we have to understand that me trying to be nice to them doesn't work. Their entire mindset is built upon a prey mentality, P-R-E-Y, not P-R-A-Y.
That's right.
Okay. And so, yeah, don't fuel their ego. The Bible says, let your yeas be yea and your nays be nays. If they did something and it was correct, say, yeah, that was right. Okay. But like we talked about a few slides before, if it's wrong, call them on it. That's incorrect.
I like it. Amen. Yeah. Pastor Paul preaching today.
I'm sorry.
Resist pressure. So, and this one might seem a little duplicative, but resist pressure. Again, it's that resist and being baited back into the old, resist having to go back through that same cycle again. Resist the pressure to respond, especially when you know the wrong thing is going to come out of your mouth, right? Yep. So again, just be mindful in situations that you don't resist that pressure to be baited back into a situation that you know is going to be a negative situation.
Yeah, they can be absolutely persuasive. Keep in mind, and I hope to cover this in greater detail in some future sessions, it is not an accident that you are in a relationship or that you are falling victim to them at work or even in your family circles. Okay. They sought you out and found you or have determined that you are an easy victim. Okay. So it's going to be very important that you learn to resist these things, okay? Because what happens is they're going to be persuasive. They're going to tell you all kinds of things. Some of them are going to be lies. One of the things that I talked to my daughters about when they were young is about how a man, we'll say a toxic man, will use your good nature, okay, against you. Okay. He knows that when you say something, you're going to do it because you're a woman of your word. He'll use that against you. He'll say, baby, you said that you'd never leave me, and now I need your help. He's locked up because he done some wrong stuff. Okay. He's using your own morals against you. And so this is what a toxic person does. He's going to pull at, or she's going to pull at the things that are actually good at you. And it'll have you thinking, well, yeah, I am supposed to love thy neighbor. There's a whole bunch of other scriptures that say, don't affiliate with this person. Okay. Get the whole story. So learn to resist those things. Okay. Part of that resisting is, again, like we talked about in the beginning, is learning to set a limit on what you will and will not allow. Nicole, you cannot talk to me that way. As a matter of fact, something she said a few slides back was, and if you continue to talk to me, here's the ultimatum. I call it the teeth. If you continue to talk to me that way, okay, I'm afraid we will no longer associate with each other. Or if I'm at work, if you continue to talk to me that way, I'm going to management. And if I issue that ultimatum, just as in good parenting, you better make good on it. Otherwise, you just made yourself a liar. And now they don't believe anything you say.
And they're going to come at you every day.
Every day. So set limits on what you will and will not allow, but also set limits on internally. In other words, emotionally. We know that they're going to tug at your emotional heartstrings. That's what they do. And so you have to set a limit internally that says, okay, I am going to feel like I already know ahead of time, okay, that when Nicole says something to me, I'm going to go, oh, she means well, because that's me. Just because I feel doesn't mean that a behavior has to follow.
That's right.
So allow yourself to feel what you feel, but behaviorally stand your ground.
I like
don't
that.
give in.
I like that.
Which
leads us right into the next one, which is learn to say no.
Everything, I saw this cute thing that said everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten, right? And I thought it was cute. And so this lesson we take from 3-year-olds, believe it or not, because of the developmental period that they're in at 3, they've learned to say no. And it's important that even though they're telling people they love no, what they learn during that developmental period is that they learn the ability to be emotionally attached to others without giving up their sense of self and their freedom to be apart from them. In other words, to be a separate person from them, okay? Because some of us think that me saying no, me telling Nicole no, means that Nicole's not going to like me, or she's going to think that I'm mean. Believe it or not, that's actually a problem with you, which needs to be addressed. So that's a whole nother session, okay? But here, I'm sorry, but it is, and so we have to practice the ability to say no. Something else, the ability to say no to others. We have to be able to do that without the fear of the loss of love. I have to be able to tell Nicole no, and know that our relationship will remain intact. Okay,
that's good. That's good. I like that.
If I chose wisely, if I chose my friend wisely, I know she can handle the no. Because she knows that I stand for something, and I know she stands for something. Okay?
And the other thing too is you shouldn't have to say no because if I say no because, well, next time they're going to come back and ask again because isn't there, right? So are we going to keep on coming with because? It's okay if you have to do that, but again, my point is just be firm in your no, or some of us are more comfortable than others sharing why. You can choose to say no, but I guess when I say because, don't say no because I have to go do this other thing. If it is a no because, say no because you used this bridge too many times and I feel like you're taking advantage of this relationship, be it work or personal. So therefore, I'm going to have to set my boundary and say no when you ask this of me.
I like that because I believe the same thing. In other words, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, say no and leave it there. Okay. Because just like Nicole just said, if you give an excuse, especially for toxic people, narcissistic people, they're going to bore right through that. And they're going to find all kinds of reasons why you should. And now you're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so the answer is, Nicole says, hey, Paul, can you do this? No, I can't. And then she says, why not? I'm sorry, I just can't.
I like that.
Keep it simple. No. Okay. The more you give, the more you give them the opportunity to turn you around.
All right. And the last one on that slide is enforce boundaries. And we have talked a little bit about this because it ain't even kind of goes along with that no too, right? You enforce your boundaries. Basically, you set your boundaries, you make them aware of them, especially when they try to cross them. Some of us, we can even get those boundaries out there up front before it even becomes a toxic situation. So it's almost like these are my non-negotiables, right? We talked, for example, the other day about premarital counseling. That might be an opportunity on the front end to say, hey, these are my non-negotiables in a situation, right? These are the things I can and cannot do, right? What I'm doing is I'm setting boundaries before we even encounter any problem situation. We talked about the same thing in blended families. We talk about the fact that we have different schedules, different routines, and this is why we have those things. Again, what we're doing is we're setting boundaries. So now that you set those boundaries, we have to be ready to enforce those boundaries when something comes along that starts to challenge those lines. And that's important because if you don't, you can set that boundary, but then if you don't hold to that, then they're going to continue to, knock that boundary down, which is part of what sometimes creates a toxic relationship. If it could initially start out being a very positive thing, it can become toxic because we don't stick to our no, because we don't enforce our boundaries, because we don't, take that time to say, hey, this is of value to me, and I'm not going to allow you or anyone else to permeate these, this membrane in my situation. So we just got to make sure that we enforce boundaries.
And, studies reflect that I actually respect Nicole more because she has boundaries. Okay. Now, notice I said I don't like her more. I respect her more. Okay. I think it was Oprah that said, we have to teach people how to treat us. Okay. And so a lot of times when this lack of boundary has begun to happen within our life, what has happened is we have, I'm trying to think of the term we use for it, but we have allowed ourselves to essentially disappear as a person. And so that's work that we have to do. Okay. So boundaries. Yes, absolutely.
We have one more slide with some safe tips on it. But while we were talking, I also thought about the fact that a lot of times, especially in relationships, and this could be in work environments too, our self-worth or our lack of feeling value in ourselves sometimes is what places us in these toxic situations. It's almost like I'm not worthy of, so therefore I've allowed these negative things to happen to me, right? And it reminded me, and it's been a while, Paul, but I know we did a Tuesday night session with Pastor Julius and Joel where we talked about the grasshopper mentality. Remember, he was talking about Peter being out on a boat, and basically he said that Simon Peter fell down on his knees. He fell down on his knees because he didn't feel worthy of the love and the grace and all the things that God was showing him. We sometimes as humans don't feel worthy of, so therefore we settle for the relationship that's not good for us. At least I'm in this relationship. Or we don't feel worthy of something better in the job market. So we keep this job because it's what we know, right? So we have to ourselves, change that grasshopper mentality, right? Because if you don't see yourself as worthy of better, it's going to be harder for you to remove yourself from that situation. So again, it goes back to that preparation and knowing that I'm worthy. And it doesn't matter how old you are. That's another thing we hear about a lot of the time. Well, I've been on this job 20 years. Why do I need to leave? You need to leave because it's wearing you down and you're talking slow and saying 20 years because for 20 years it's been dragging you down, right? Again, stand on God's word and know that all things are possible for one who believes. So it doesn't matter that I've been here 20 years. God might be trying to move you somewhere else, but because you don't recognize your own self-worth and all the goodness that he's given you, you don't put forth those small steps to move you to that next place, right? So get your positive affirmation out, write it on your computer screen, bathroom door, window, everywhere you go. All things are possible for one who believes. And I have to kind of just reiterate that because we have worked with individuals in toxic relationships and they do feel like, I have nowhere else to go. We have to remember that when people get in these situations, their blinders are on and all they can see is the small possible loss of what happens if I change this versus having that wider perspective, because we don't have those right supports around us. We don't have those right people feeding into us of believing and knowing that there is some more good for us out there in situations. So again, we're only trying to keep you safe until you can move yourself out of this situation so that you can start walking in the destiny that God has created for you.
It starts with self-worth. Some of us may not, in other words, we may not have come from environments that were nurturing. Okay. And what happens in those environments is we develop negative self-images of ourselves and these things. And over time, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And so here I am, a grown man, a grown woman, and I struggle with my self-image. Change is possible. Change is possible. It happens gradually. Allow it to happen gradually. Do exactly what Nicole said. In other words, first of all, affiliate yourself with positive people, the people that you would like to become, that mirror, some of the values that you have. Okay. But also take those positive affirmations. They're not going to, when you first begin saying them, they're not going to make sense. Why? Because you haven't been saying them. Okay. So it's going to sound like a foreign voice. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Tomorrow, come back. Say it again. Say it again. And it's not going to begin to resonate until, 3 months from now. Okay. And even then, say it again. Say it again. I am worthy. Okay. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of respect. I am a good person. Line those things up and begin to tell yourself those things, and then surround yourself with people who also remind you that. Okay. Genuinely.
Amen.
So recognize your own self-worth. That's huge.
Amen.
That first one talks about the fact that we should recognize toxic patterns before there is emotional involvement. That's the best time. Okay. In other words, Proverbs 22:3 says, the prudent see danger and take refuge. Okay. In other words, the word prudence in and of itself means that I am looking towards the future and what will be good for my future. Okay. So the prudent see danger and they take refuge. From an emotional standpoint, here's the problem. Once my emotions become engaged in a person, now it's difficult to disconnect. It's easy to disconnect when I meet someone and I notice that, okay, this person's toxic. They have this habit, they have that habit, they're womanizers, they're abusive to men, they're all of these things. Okay. It's easy for me to spot those things at the beginning when I don't have an emotional attachment. But out of all of our senses that God gave us, the emotional one is the strongest one. And so what happens is once you build an emotional attachment to someone and your girlfriend says he's no good, now you can't hear your girlfriend because the emotional attachment is stronger than the logic. Your parents are saying he's no good, but you've built an emotional attachment. And so you can't hear what your mother's telling you. You can't hear what friends are telling you. And eventually you find out through your own mistakes when really you could have avoided all of this by learning to spot these patterns that we've been talking about before you ever engage with them.
Amen. Mhm. All right. Very good. And now I realize I got ahead of myself because the very next one says recognize your own self-worth. And I just went on my own self-worth.
Yeah,
Link.
that's
So,
fine.
Paul.
Go to embrace change. That's fine. You did a good job. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Okay, embrace change. We are all comfortable. We all have habits. We're creatures of habits, right?
Mhm.
And that's a good thing in some situations, but not always. So we have to embrace change and recognize that with change, we are going to have to change some of our patterns, the way we do things, how we function. We might have to work with a little bit less than for now so that we can grow to larger, but embrace the change. And the reason why you embrace the change is because you know that at the end of that path, there's going to be more. There's going to be more of God's blessings in your life, showing up in your life, because He's already, assigned them and told them to you, but you'll finally be able to walk them out, right?
Right.
And we do recognize that that's not an easy thing because we don't like to change. Like I used to have the rule when my kids were younger was if you need anything, school supplies, project stuff, I expect to get that text before I get home. Don't wait till I get home and I change my clothes and I got to go back out there again, right? It's all about me just being comfortable being me. So what if I have to do that, right? Embrace that, right? Roll with it, be comfortable with it because it's really about you being a better you at the end of the day.
It is. It really is. And so, in embracing change, you'll hear the phrase change is good.
Mhm.
That is good in and of itself, but it's really not so much that change is good as much as it is the ability to change.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what's good. In other
Mhm.
words, that means I can move and not be conformed to the pattern of this
Mm.
world.
Yeah,
And now I have the opportunity to be transformed because I can change. Okay,
absolutely.
if I am a person that cannot change, you can quote Romans 12:2 all day, it means nothing to me. Okay, the ability to change. And again, much like I've mentioned with a lot of other things, start small.
Mhm.
Find something small that needs to change and change it. Because what you want to do is you want to be able to get into the habit
Mhm.
of learning how to change. And it's
Mhm.
difficult when I've lived a life of control, 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 control. Because what control says is it's the way I want it, don't change it, don't change it,
Mhm.
don't change it.
Now, Paul,
Meanwhile,
you sitting here talking about embracing change and why we need to change, but yet our last tip says if change can't happen.
let's take a deep breath. I almost want to go into prayer on this one because what's happening simply is that you've employed all of these techniques and more. Maybe you've sought counseling. Maybe you've suggested counseling. You've done all of these things. Okay, that brings you to what we used to call in the old church a decision point.
Mhm.
Okay, after being offered all of this information, after attempting to do your best to reconcile a relationship, not just romantic, could be professional, could be with friends, could be with family. And what you're noticing is this person is not going to respect your boundaries. They're not going to respect your emotions. They're simply not. You have a decision to make. Now, what's interesting about this is that that is not our decision to make. You must make that decision. Okay. Some people will arrive at the decision that says, okay, I've tried everything. I've told him or her not to hit me, not to call me names, not to put me
Mhm.
down in front of my friends, my family, all of
Mhm.
these different things, and they won't change. All of the documentation, all of the research suggests that, especially if someone has a narcissistic uh, personality disorder, they're not going to change.
Mhm.
In other words, most toxic people simply are not going to change. And what that means is that, okay, it's disheartening to think that I married the wrong person. It's disheartening to think that I chose to work for the wrong organization and I've been here 10 years. It's
Mhm.
disheartening. Okay. But what do I want for me? And if what I want for me prevails and I want better for myself, then I may need to consider separation from that person. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, separation doesn't have to be permanent.
Mhm.
Sometimes the separation can be temporary. In other words, there's no better way to get for my wife to get my attention on a serious matter than to say, I think we need to separate.
Mhm.
Because now I'm going, holy cow, she's for real. Okay. And that may jar me into actually changing. But
My apologies.
yeah. And so you have a decision to make. Will I stay or will I go? Will I separate temporarily in a last attempt to try to get this person's attention
Mhm.
on, I don't want to live this way?
Mhm. Amen.
I
Amen.
think marriages are 50% in the
Mm.
United States right now. Why? Because the communication piece never happened,
Mhm.
you know. So that's the disheartening part
Mhm.
about this. If change cannot happen, then you have a decision you're going to need to make.
Amen. All right. Let's go to our final thought slide. We got some tips we want to leave you with before we wrap up. And the first one says familiar and comfortable versus healthy and safe. And Paul, I challenge you on this, the familiar and comfortable. Maybe it's familiar and uncomfortable. Why do we say familiar and comfortable? Because we're talking about the fact that it is a toxic situation.
Right. That is true. Depending on how some of us grew up, you know, and a lot of this goes back all the way to childhood. Depending on how some of us grew up, what happens is we hear in a chaotic environment, we hear yelling, we hear screaming, we see fighting, we see all of these different things. And what happens is our brain becomes conditioned for those things. And now I meet somebody and they trigger these things within me because I'm used to hearing chaos, I'm used to hearing yelling, I'm used to hearing screaming, and I confuse that with an attraction to this person. Okay. So what happens is the reason why I think I'm attracted to this person is because it's familiar.
Mhm.
My mom and dad used to fight. It's familiar. You know, I used to have to put up with a lot of this stuff in my upbringing. It's familiar. Now, I don't know it's familiar. In my mind, I'm going, it's just something about this person that they feel like real familiar, real comfortable. Well, yeah, it's because you've been in that situation as part of your upbringing, and now you're meeting this person, and yeah, it's very, very familiar, very comfortable. Okay.
Mhm.
That doesn't make it healthy, that doesn't make it
That's right.
safe. So it's important that you know the difference between the two. You'll hear some people say, okay, well, I'd rather deal with a devil I know as opposed to a devil I don't know. I want to challenge you. Okay. Who's to say that the next person or the next situation has to be a devil? Okay.
Amen. I like that. That was my thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And,
so
and
go ahead.
your point of the environment is so true because that's what we know. And if that's the only relationship we've ever seen, we don't really have an expectation of relationships being different, right? Because that's what we know. So we think that's okay. But hopefully you get some exposure and connections to some others at some point to show you, you know what, there is a healthier and safer way to be so that you can thrive in your relationships.
Mhm. um, self-sabotage, which is part of that
Mhm.
as well. Okay. There's this fear that we have of being alone, abandoned. And sometimes that comes, we call them schemas. Those
Mhm.
come right out of childhood, especially
Mhm.
if my father left or
Mhm.
my mother wasn't around. My mother, either one of them did drugs. And at some point, we're going to get into the aces that define all of this.
Mhm.
But if I've experienced any of those type of situations, I develop a fear of abandonment
Mhm.
and I don't even know it. And so what happens is I cling to people because I have a low self-esteem and I think I this is the best I can do.
Mhm.
He hits me,
Okay.
he abuses me, he talks about me, but this is the best I can do. And it's simply not true. Okay. And so it's important that we begin to get those things addressed as part of our personal therapy. Okay. Seek out
Absolutely.
counseling and look to get those things rectified. Okay. Because there's a reason why a toxic person finds you.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
And it has to do with this right here. A lot of them are trauma responses. Okay. Many people have been through traumatic events in their life. And because of those traumatic events, they are sensitized to toxic people. And it goes back to the same thing that I was saying in the beginning, is that they begin to mistake, we'll call them vibes, that the toxic person gives off for love. And
Mhm.
it's absolutely not, you know. The big thing here is that, are you willing to recognize that these negative patterns might be you? And are you willing to unlearn them? Okay.
Mm,
Because if there is a pattern of toxic people, you leave one, you go to another one. You leave one toxic job, you go to another one. If there is a pattern of this, take a look at yourself. Okay. And
amen.
there may be something that you need to unlearn in order to be successful in this entire process.
Amen. I like it. All right. So I think we're coming to our challenge for the month, Paul. But before we issue that challenge too, like just bringing it back, thinking about renew you as our focus, right? And we see our
Mhm.
scriptures about renewing your mind. What you need to do in order for any change to happen in any situation, regardless of the type of toxic relationship, is that through the renewing of your mind, basically saying that you allowing that transformation to take place, and that transformation is really allowing yourself to believe that what God says, what God has said, can be true in your life, right? So basically, it's about shifting your capacity to believe God. And
The
then when
word.
you're able to do that, you can envision what God is able to accomplish in our lives. He's already provided us with the keys and the ability to remove ourselves from these toxic situations. It's up to us to act on it, right? So you got to have that faith and that work to be able to move yourself out of this negative situation.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Are you okay with sharing the hotline number
Oh, yes.
with
So,
folks? And I
yeah.
understand why we say this, because these are some serious situations that we're talking about. And
Mhm.
there may be someone right now who is in a situation where they are not safe. I think the statistics suggest that it takes on average 7 attempts for someone to leave an abusive
Mhm.
relationship,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
especially where there's children involved and things like this. But
Mhm.
we want you to know you're not alone, and
Mhm.
there is help. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Oh no, absolutely. And also, it might not be you that's in a crisis. You might have a friend that you might need some answers to help support them. So you can call this number as well. So it's the domestic violence hotline, and that number is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's the easiest way to remember it. So that is 1-800-799-7233. So make sure that like I said, even if you have a question, if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, you don't want to wait for it to get to a crisis situation to reach out, but this is a number that you can call for yourself or for a friend. Now, in Virginia, we have a different line. So that's the National Domestic Violence Line. But in Virginia, we have a state hotline. And this is one that people like because you can call or you can text, but it's two different numbers. And Pastor, I don't know if we have the capacity to put this in the chat box for individuals, but you can call 1-800-838-8238. Again, that number is 1-800-838-8238. Or if you prefer to text, you can text 804-793-9999. I know that was a lot of numbers. I'm going to give you that text one more time. 804-793-9999. 9999. And again, it might be I have a question, like a red flag, something starting not to feel good, or all the way to a crisis situation. I need to be out of this situation now. Please call. They're there to offer some support and some true guidance to help you move yourself into a safe situation.
Good. And in the future, what we'll try to do is we'll try to make sure those numbers are available to kind of scroll across the bottom of the screen there. A better you is waiting to happen. Sometimes it's scary. I know it's scary, but better is awaiting you. I challenge you to move towards better.
Amen. Well, we hope we have shared something that's been helpful to you today. And again, if you think others would benefit from this, again, you can have them go to YouTube and subscribe to our Renew You ministry, and they can look back at the ones we've done over the past as well. Again, make sure that you share this information with others and plan to tune in with us next month. Be blessed.
All right. Take care.